Hello everyone and welcome to Sci-Fi Zone, where we will be discussing science fiction movies and TV shows from the past, the present and the future. I'm here today with Claire and MPS, and we're coming to you from the wonderful store of Alternate Worlds.
Alternate Worlds has been specialising in comics and collectibles for over 40 years, with a back issue collection of over 500,000 comics covering the golden age right through to latest releases, including signed and slabbed gems. They also have an enormous graphic novel collection, one of the largest ranges of manga in the country, as well as toys, statues and pops, and new items are arriving every Wednesday. Each month, Alternate Worlds hosts its own premium comic day, where all the rare treasures are put on display for inspection and purchase. The store also runs regular tournaments and competitions for both comic and gaming fans. And for local and interstate and international buyers, the Alternate Worlds website features their complete range of products. So whether you come in online or in store, visit them soon.
So the reason why we're actually here is because Joe, who's the owner of Alternate Worlds and the producer of this show, had a bit of a bonding session, if you will, over a film called Galaxina, a 1980s science fiction movie. You guys ever seen that movie before?
No.
It's an absolute classic. Now, I've got to say, I've seen a lot of fantastic science fiction movies in my time, and Galaxina probably isn't one of them. But the important thing is it was made like nearly 40 years ago, and it's the reason why we're here today. So there you go, something good of it came of it after all. How about that? Speaking of the 1980s, even though it's 2019, it's like the 1980s all over again. We've got Star Wars movies and TV shows coming out just about everywhere. Recently, they had all the Star Trek films, and of course you've got Discovery, and even Picard's got a new show coming. Doctor Who got revitalised in the mid-2000s and has been kicking goals ever since. Last year, we had a Predator movie. This year, we've got a Terminator movie, and of course, even Dune's getting a new movie. It's like complete retro madness. But the film that I want to focus on is Terminator. Dark Fate, apparently, is its name. And I was wondering what you guys happen to think of it, with Linda Hamilton and Arnie both coming back for it.
I'm excited to see Linda Hamilton again. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing what she can do with it now. It's really good to see, it probably sounds a bit silly, but older women, kicking ass.
Yeah.
I think she'll be great.
And she is classed as one of the first female action heroes. So even in a recent interview, she decided to say that basically she's not really a role model, but people are seeing her as a role model, which is fantastic because she was back at the time. She wasn't some sort of souped up superhero or anything like that. She was a normal woman who had an extraordinary circumstance occur to her, and then in Terminator 2, for instance, she just blitzed it and was some sort of super.
She earned it though. She worked to get herself into that position.
Hard.
Yeah.
It was really good to see.
Love that.
And now, after 28 years, she's coming back again, and again with Arnie as well. So that'll be good.
Yeah, I'm intrigued because after the first two films, it's like the rest of the franchise has sort of all gone on its way, and most people have sort of forgotten about a lot of them. And I just don't want this to be a situation where they produce a new movie, bring the original actors back, and they're not past their prime, but you have people saying, oh no, she was much better in the original movie or in Judgment Day. So there's always a risk when that occurs, but good on them for doing it, I suppose. I mean, my personal favourite was actually, I like Terminator Salvation of all the more recent films, but we'll have to wait and see, I suppose. So
we're going to have to see if the continuity exists and if they're still running. This is Terminator, the new Terminator 3, because we had Terminator 3, then we had Salvation, we had the series, and then back to, no, those two don't exist sort of thing. So it's going to be interesting to see how they plan this out.
Time travel always makes the storylines and continuity stuff interesting, but I have to say I love time travel.
See, that's the issue. Like, I find that Skynet in the original movie, they had to try and destroy it. They destroyed it, then they destroyed it in the second movie, and then it seems to come back again and again. It's like Return of the Living Dead. They won't stay dead. And it's just like, it gets to a stage you kind of lose track as to what's going on. It's like, how can it keep coming back again and again? So
yeah, I'd hate to have to sit there and do an actual timeline of that whole series.
It'd just drive you nuts. So absolutely crazy. But anyway, the film is due out, I think, sometime this year. Very little is actually known about it, actually. And we're looking at a couple of pictures now of some of the actresses who will be appearing in the show. They've kept a lot of things very, very quiet. Good on them for doing it. And no doubt we'll chat about this film when it finally gets released. And we'll see what happens. So Remember, there is no fate but what we make. How about that? There we go. Very cool.
And they'll be back.
He'll be back. Yeah. Oh, yes, exactly right. Apparently, the picture is that what's his name? Arnie actually has a beard.
Oh,
How does that
wow.
work? Yeah. So there you go. We're looking at a picture of it now. It's
Okay.
like Arnie has a beard.
They'll probably do what they did in the last film and say, oh, look, he had to age to make it look like he was older because he's aged physically. You can't sort of hold a robot back sort of thing. So
Yeah,
he had the grey hair and he looked older and they justified it and you went, well, okay, that's fine. But, so now he's got the beard and,
Can you say in the Arnie voice, I'm aging gracefully?
I'm aging gracefully. I'm going to get to the chopper with my Zimmer frame.
So there you go. How good is that? So we're a show that's talking about science fiction movies and TV shows, and clearly we are in the process of watching movies and TV shows of all sorts, types and ranges. So this is where we get to ask my panelists. I'll start with you, MPS. So what have you been catching up with lately?
You name it, everything. But I've been focusing on the Orville.
The Orville, golly.
The new Seth MacFarlane show, which is just finished its second season run. And I got to say, it's a bit of fun. Okay, we're talking about, well, what some people are saying is what Star Trek should have been. Okay, and look, there's some really good episodes. There's some really, really good episodes. There's a couple of fluff ones, but every series has that. So you can't have excellent on top of excellent on top of excellent all the time, because then you expect a higher standard. So for the most part, it's a pretty fun show. You've got Seth MacFarlane, who created Family Guy and all those other sort of animated series. This is his first live action series. So he is there with a cast of basically unknowns. And it's funny because the character of Kelly, I was watching G.I. Joe Redemption the other night and I'm going, why does she look so familiar? I can see her. She had darker hair, and I had to check it out. And she played Lady J in G.I. Joe Redemption.
She was in Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. too. She played Bobby, a very good character, very kick-ass character. Sorry, I keep using that phrase.
I heard. So it's a family show, everybody. But
Well, she's a tough.
Yeah.
She plays a tough character really well, and I think in the Orville she balances it. She's tough when she needs to be, but it's not so much physical fighting and that kind of stuff. It's being a strong person.
The thing that I found with the show that is very intriguing and it's very, very unusual, it's actually almost unheard of for a science fiction show, is that it has all the dialogue is contemporary. I've never heard the word dude used so much before in any other show over and over again, and I think a lot of people are dialing into it because they say, oh, this is how we speak on the street as of today.
Yes.
And I think that's actually helping a lot, actually. So
shows like Star Trek always use fairly formal, quite formal language.
Yeah. So you have to wonder, if someone could go back and retrofit Next Generation or the original series with contemporary speaking, can you imagine Spock or Kirk going, hey dude, I don't know how that would work.
That would be fun.
But that'd be the same, that's the same sort of concept really. So, but I think that's got a lot to do with it as well.
Yeah.
And I think that works because we probably will have that sort of language in the future. We're not going to turn out to be like English poets again, like Shakespeare, and go, thou shalt get my starship and fly to the next galaxy. It's like we will be talking like this sort of thing, unless language has a massive change.
Well, it'll shift and change. The words they use instead of dude, there'll be something else.
Yeah.
But that sort of contemporary feel. You're right. It makes it more accessible, I guess, to people.
Have you noticed that some of the episodes actually have Star Trek movies inspired music? I mean, I've picked up Wrath of Khan music and even a tune from Vija, so that's clearly been intentionally put in. Now, here's one for you. So in Star Trek, you got the Federation, United Federation of Planets. And here for Orville, we have the Union, right? And I was trying to think, why would you have called it the Union? And I have a theory, because I have not researched this at all, I have a theory as to why they call it the Union, is so that USS Orville is actually Union Spaceship Orville.
Makes sense.
How's that work? So there you go. So for someone out there who can actually look that up and go, am I correct or not? We can verify that accordingly. But that, to me, sort of worked quite well, actually, Union Spaceship. So who knows? There you go.
It's how they would announce any sort of ship, whether it be a military ship of today or back in the past, the Enterprise, the first boat that floated, that sort of thing.
Speaking of the Enterprise, USS Enterprise, what does USS stand for in that?
That's a good question.
It is United Spaceship, and they actually mentioned that in an original series episode too. So there you go. One for the fans out there. Now, what I found interesting is that in this show, Orville, they introduced the holodeck. They have replicators, but they don't have transporters. And I was always intrigued by that as to why they just didn't include that at all. So
probably because the technology may not have been up to that standard in terms of what the show sort of what the timeline sort of suggests, but practically they're ripping off everything else from Star Trek. So you can sort of look at the bridge design. You can look similar. You can sort of see similarly with some of the ship parts of the design. All their people are exactly the same sort of people. You got your helmsman and you've got your communications and all that sort of stuff. So you're basically looking at, and Seth MacFarlane's made no qualms about the fact that this is basically Star Trek
It's
in his
definitely inspired by
in his
Star Trek.
universe. So even the uniforms are fairly close. They're all different colours rather than being just one sort of colour as a military organisation would have, sort of thing. So
I'm going to say I'm actually impressed by, like with Seth. I don't actually follow much of his stuff at all, but he writes most of the episodes. He's obviously the star of the show, and he's even directed some of his episodes. It's like, where do you find the time to do that? That is magnificent time management. And usually you can do one or two, but to do the three of them, that's amazing.
Clearly, he loves doing it. I mean, that you can pretty much see that on screen. That he loves doing what he's doing. He loves being there. He loves being a part of it. So when you love something that much, you find the time.
So this is a call for Seth MacFarlane. If you happen to be watching this show and want to answer this question for us, feel free to let us know and we'll get you on board, so to speak, and we can chat about it. So how good that? There's your invite to the show. How good is that? One of the things that I found interesting is some of the episodes were very topical in relation to today, and of course you have the whole thing about the same-sex race and how having females introduced is actually going against their the way they operate, exist, live, if you will, which is almost like how would you say it? Homosexuals were treated in the 1950s and the 60s. So if you had that sort of concept put back into the original series, it makes you wonder if those sort of episodes could have actually worked or been allowed even.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, in the 60s, they were pushing the envelope in the same way, but just different topics and in a way that was acceptable or that would be accepted at the time. I think it's one of the connections with Star Trek. It's one of the more obvious things about the comparison between Orville and the original series particularly is they are telling those stories. They are asking those questions, and that's one of the reasons I love it. But they're maybe slightly different questions. We've moved on from what they were talking about and questioning in the 60s, and so Seth's able to do it. And more openly as well. I think society generally is a lot more open about talking about those sorts of things. So it's he's doing things that they wouldn't have got away with in the 60s. They tried a little bit in the 80s with Next Gen, but not nearly as much. But I think doing it now is really great. I think what he's doing is fantastic.
Yeah, it's very good. Actually, one episode that stood out for me, and I absolutely did love it, it's actually called A Majority Rules, about social media being used to vote for everything. And that is so close to real life where, the fate of something, even like this show, for example, the fate of this show depends on how it gets rated on social media and what people think of it. And that episode was just taking it to another level entirely, where a person's life depends upon it.
Well,
that was fantastic.
It's starting to happen in China already. You can be blacklisted. You can can get rated, and if you do something wrong, it doesn't just. So if you have an accident and it's your fault, and you get rated by it, it doesn't just affect your ability to buy a car or get insurance or whatever. It can affect your whole social life. And your families potentially as well. So we are heading in that direction. I think it's a bit scary.
Yes.
But the technology is available.
Yeah. Actually, one thing the show does have in its favour, which is quite good, is the diversity of aliens. Like, even though they do sometimes do the old Star Trek trope of just putting some spots on somebody and suddenly they're an alien, but at least some of the more extreme versions. And I think the character's called Fat.
The slime monster.
The slime monster. That is ingenious.
Awesome.
I've got to say, that is actually very, very, very clever. And it's good to see that they're sort of like going really full on in regards to different alien species, which, the original Star Trek sort of suffered. I mean, even the Next Gen and various other shows sort of suffered on. So it's really, really good to see.
Yeah.
So, absolutely fantastic. Any final words on the Orville?
I loved the sort of like the double end of series, episodes 13, 14. It was a bit of a... I didn't see the episode 14 coming. Now, we're not going to spoil it for those who haven't seen it, but you start off with episode 13 and you go, I can see where this is going. And then episode 14, you go, hang on a second, I thought they would have thrown a completely different story at them. Next thing you know, it's a continuation and you go, that's interesting. So that, and plus the identity, the double episode with the Kalons, having all the robots basically try and destroy all of humanity. And that was pretty cool. That was another good double episode, all based on Isaac, who, in an earlier episode, well, the doctor falls in love with him because he's looking after the kids and helping her out and doing all this other stuff. So, yeah, they're probably my favourite episodes in the series at this stage.
Yeah, Identity was like Orville's version of Best of Both Worlds, you could argue. So, yeah, very, very good show. So if you haven't actually seen the show, by all means, they've finished their second season, so I assume the third season's somewhere in the works. So get a look in. It's good family entertainment, and there's a little bit of adult humour in there from time to time, but overall it's not too bad at all. And by all means, check it out when you get a chance. So it's definitely a fan favourite. Not too sure about people out on the street, but for fans, they absolutely love it, which is really, really cool. Speaking of things that are very, very cool, it's now time for this.
Quiz.
What they say is a quick quiz is a good quiz. What we don't want you to do is check out the answers on Google or do any of that sort of stuff. If you know the answers, that's fantastic. If you don't know the answers, well, you know what? You'll learn them next month when we put them up on the screen and we answer the questions.
You'll be officially edumacated. There you go.
Hopefully. Are you ready, people of Earth? Question 1. What model replicant is Roy Batty in Blade Runner? Question 2. In Flash Gordon, Ming the Merciless worships a god. What's his name? Question 3. In Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan, what is the name of the colourful nebula the Enterprise hides inside? Question 4. Who is Brain's girlfriend in Escape from New York? And the final question. In The Last Starfighter, a race of bounty hunters who work for the Kodan are called what?
So the cool thing about these particular questions is that all the answers appear on screen. So if you know your movies, you should be able to figure it out. And as you can tell, we're still going with the 1980s theme. Now, how did you guys go? Do you reckon you know most of the answers to some of those?
No.
No? Well, I reckon there's going to be people out there who think that is just way too easy. So how about we chuck in a sixth question for you? So in the movie 2010, which ironically was nothing like the original actual 2010, the Russian spaceship was called the Alexei Leonov. What was it originally called before they changed the name? Now, if you don't know or need a clue, here's this.
You know that we are building the Alexei Leonov to also go up there.
I thought you were going to call it the...
Yeah, we changed last month.
So how did you go with that? Now, if you know the answer to that question, you'll just be the coolest cat in town. Go to your high school, go to university, go wherever, and just say, I know the answer to this question. And that's where you know you'll be one of us, except these two have got no idea what the answer is, but that doesn't matter. Okay, so we were discussing about movies and TV shows. We've heard what MPS has been watching. What has Claire been up to? So Claire, fill us in.
Okay, so Endgame.
Not the Avengers
Avengers Endgame.
I thought you meant the Mrs. Peel, Mr. Steed Avengers, the classic Avengers.
Remember those days, but anyway.
No,
Yes.
the new Avengers. I don't know what they're called these days, just the Avengers.
Yeah.
I went and saw it. I've seen it twice now because I loved it so much the first time. We should probably warn people that there will be spoilers in this discussion.
Yes, good point.
So feel free to pause, go away and watch the movie, and then come back and watch the rest of the show.
And in fact, we'll make it easy for you. We'll pause it right now. Ready? Go. Okay, there you go. We're back again. So hope you loved the movie. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Look, I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I think it's one of the more interesting sort of Armageddon type stories as well. I really like the fact that the bad guy actually has a reason for what he's doing. Thanos wasn't just looking for power. He wasn't just wanting to control people. It was what he thought was a real proper good reason for doing what he was doing. I mean, he genuinely believed that half the people in the universe needed to disappear, that would save the rest of the universe. I quite like that. I thought that was really good. I get a bit bored with villains who are just bad for the sake of being bad almost. So one of the things I really like about this story was the fact that he had a reason, and he had a way of doing it. You know, he had a plan. He knew how he was going to get there, and he genuinely thought that he was doing the right thing, and not just for himself, but for the entire universe. Oh, one of the other things that I really liked about Thanos, he had a retirement plan. Like, he wasn't just going to rule the world and then expect to rule the world forever, like a lot of them do. He was going to do his deed, and then he already had figured out that once that was done, that was it. He was done. He was over, and he had somewhere to go and
You know what
somewhere
was
to be.
missing though? From his retirement plan, a white picket fence. Got to have one of those.
Well, he's only been there for 2 days. Remember, he
He's not human.
He's got
He's not
stones. He
correct.
can make fences.
Well,
Can't be
he
that
got rid of
hard.
stones, that's why
He could have done the fence and then got rid of the
you
stones.
sit there and you go, I'm going to wipe out half the entire galaxy of any living creature, and I'm going to make a
don't
fence.
forget the white picket
I need a
fence.
fence.
If you think out there that he should have had a white picket fence, mate, leave a comment in the section and we'll read it out in the next
See,
episode.
the thing is, if you put a white picket fence up there, how tall is it going to be? Because he's way taller than most humans. So he's going to have this tiny little down on your knees type of fence. As opposed
Whatever. Anyway,
And he's got the whole planet to himself anyway. What's the fence going to keep out?
Yeah, what's he keeping out?
Where was his PlayStation and Xbox games? Anyway, I
He
suppose
only
when
had
you
one hand. You know,
Oh yeah,
was
that's
damaged,
a
so,
good
you
point.
know,
Yeah.
What can you do with one hand?
Yes, very good. So what happens when someone says, "Oh, he's gonna knock half the population off"? You say, "Well, don't take my better half, but by the same token, take my better half."
But it's not about better or worse. And that's
true.
one of the other things I like
yeah.
about this. It's random. I mean, he is saying half the universe needs to go. And he didn't feel that he was the person to make that decision. He didn't want to be choosing. And he didn't even make anyone else choose. You know, he set it up so that it would be completely random. So it would be as fair as possible, I guess. And he saw that as being the right way to do it. I found that really interesting.
But then you have Clint, who is Hawkeye. You have his family. The 4 other people in his family, his 3 kids and his wife, just disappear. You know, and you go, well, that's not really half. That's, you know, if you do your maths, that's 80% of his family have gone.
Yeah, okay.
So, you know, it's one of those things where it doesn't feel random as such.
Well, see, I had the same thought. I mean, when I first saw it, and Hawkeye in particular, and you see his situation at the very beginning of this movie. He loses everyone. He loses his wife and
That was a very good sequence,
all
actually.
three
It
of
was
his
really,
children.
really
It
well
was
done.
beautifully
Yeah.
done, really beautifully done.
And sad because you know you sort of see, and this is where the timeline sort of skips for the film. You're back at the end of Avengers, and as his daughter shoots the bow, gets the perfect bullseye.
Yeah.
As she goes to get it, he turns around and gone. And it's
Yeah,
like,
I have to say, I love
oh.
a movie that makes me cry in the first 5 minutes, and this did. But the point is, yes, he lost his entire family, and my thought initially was the same as yours, that it should have been only half of them. He should have, you know, his wife and one of the kids should have stayed maybe, or something like that. But it comes back to the point of it being truly random, because if it is actually truly random, then yes, some people are going to lose their whole family.
So the question is, did the mother-in-law survive?
Because when you look further on and you see Ant-Man come back,
Yeah.
his daughter survives, but his ex-wife didn't.
That's right.
You know, so and it was 5 years later, sort of thing, and you go, well, that's your 50%, that's your randomness. But
Yeah. And look, the other thing, of course, is that it's the whole universe. So in terms of being truly random, in fact, planet Earth could have lost everyone because, you know, another planet might have not lost anyone. So that would still it would still meet the 50-50 rule, but it could actually, if it's truly random, that could happen.
See, the thing that excited me, and this is tragic, I know, it was a great movie, fantastic, wonderful, but there's one moment when I go, oh, that is awesome, and I'm sorry, I hide my head in shame, is when I saw the Audi e-sport concept car that the 3 guys were driving, and I looked at that and said, I drive an Audi in real life, and it was just like, oh, that is grouse, what's that? And I thought, that's not good.
do you know the only thing that bugged me about the scene where Tony Stark drives up to the Avengers headquarters? It's an electric car, but you hear all these motors
I know.
running, and it's like, oh, come on, guys, at least get it right. It's an electric car. All you should hear is this.
Or nothing. They
Nothing,
put like
basically.
little high-pitched whines in them.
And-
So,
and-
yeah,
and-
sorry
yeah,
about that.
so-
But it was actually a very good film, so yes.
I got to say that the only other thing that there were 2 things, and one of them's okay to talk about. The other one might be a bit, well, you got upset with me when I sort of mentioned
Oh,
it.
okay.
One of them is Hulk being permanently Hulk. You know, David Banner is permanently Hulk. It's like, that's a bit sort of silly because he's massive, you know, and does he really need glasses? You know, that's the thing. You know, you got this big guy, and all of a sudden he's you know, got big clothes, and he's always wearing pants. Now he's wearing a shirt and everything.
Yeah.
You know, the kids come up to him and say, "Oh, it's Hulk," and you know, Hulk out. Oh, please.
Actually, that was a funny moment.
It was.
The whole thing, the kids wanted to do the selfie with Hulk, so yeah, it was very clever.
I think it's a natural progression, though. I mean, Bruce is constantly trying to figure this out. So at some point, he's going to come to some kind of balance. And I think this is a good balance. I think it makes sense in terms of the story arc.
See, the only problem is there's no She-Hulk yet, so he's got no one to talk to in terms of Hulk things. You know, so
Yeah.
in the comic book there's She-Hulk and you know, there's the other Hulk, but you sort of go,
okay.
well, his going to be by himself even more so now because
I think it was just to fix a problem. They needed the whole character, they needed Banner, they put them together so at least he could communicate as a normal person.
Yeah.
And so you get the best of both worlds and you just, yeah.
And it gave
get
us
around
that
yeah.
awesome moment where he gets booted out of his body.
Ah, yes, yes.
That was
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, yeah, very good.
I do love the bit where they go back to the first Avengers film and he sees himself destroying the city and everything. He comes back and goes, gratuitous virus. Bang. Whoop.
So
That's it.
How many people are going to be watching the Avengers movie and when they get that sequence, I assume it actually appears in the movie from
Yeah.
the point of view of the, and you're thinking, just around the corner, all the other guys are just there. So, yeah.
Again, time travel, which messes with me
Oh,
consistently.
golly,
Going,
yes, it does.
hang on, if you go this one, you
And this is why I love it so much.
Yeah, that's
I
why it was
love
so
time
good.
travel.
Is there anything further you want to say about the Avengers?
I love the fact that there were so many women and that they were so involved.
Yep.
I have no problem with any of the female characters. I didn't like how they were portrayed to bring in a solo team. So you didn't see any of the guys turn up and go, look, I'm so-and-so, blah, blah, blah.
No.
But you had the girls come up and you go,
What
I'm
you
1, 2,
had-
3, 4, 5, and then they all quit. I
Yeah.
would have done it. I would have shot that whole scene differently.
Yes, and can I just say, the way that was done, and I watched it again last night, and I've been thinking about it since, because we've had this conversation before. The guys, when they've got that glove, they know they've got to get it from here to here, and in between is all of Thanos' army. And what do? They throw it from one guy to the next. It's a relay team.
It was just a gridiron
It's
match.
a relay team.
It was a gridiron match.
Okay,
That was it.
so gridiron. I don't know gridiron, but
American football.
I know what American football is. I just don't know how it works. But the point is, that's how guys do things quite often. What women tend to do is come together and support each other. And that's why I loved that scene. I mean, there were a couple of when they sort of came in, you kind of went, oh, but she was off over doing something else. But they saw Captain Marvel had the glove, she needed to get through an entire army, and instead of just letting her try and dodge through herself, they all came in and they supported her. And I loved that. I mean, for me, that was one of the best scenes because it just showed how women do work together and support each other. And I'm not saying one is necessarily better than the other. You know, the way that guys do things quite often, that's a good way of doing things and it works in a lot of times. But in this instance, when you've got an entire army in front of you, you don't want to be trying to get through that by yourself. That's one of the reasons why I loved it. And I guess my point of view is slightly different from yours.
And that's fine. I don't mind that. But, you know, from a filmmaker point of view,
Yeah.
I would have shot that scene different. I would have still had the same concept, but I would have had sort of one sort of going, maybe the next one seeing, and then following them all together, basically, and then grouping them in that way to help each other.
Yeah.
But not just have them all stand there, what looked like a gratuitous, we're all the girls, and here we all are, and it's like...
Okay, it was no more gratuitous than Captain America standing there and saying, Avengers,
Assemble.
assemble. That was gratuitous.
That was the comic book
Exactly.
sort of thing, so that was
I
fine.
completely understand why they did that. And it works, but I don't see that that's any different or any better than the way they brought the women together.
Only slightly, because it was everyone. It was girls and guys,
Well, it was.
flying horses, everyone.
Yeah.
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria if you know your Ghostbusters. So there you go.
Yeah, look, I just want more.
Well, look, this almost ends Phase 3 of
Yeah.
the Avengers series. The next film that comes out will be Spider-Man Far From Home, and that'll end Phase 3, apparently.
Right,
Okay,
okay.
so that's the final bit, because if you've seen the trailer for that, you'll notice that there are bits that relate back to the Avengers film, and the trailer was only released just a few days ago. So from that point of view, it's going to be interesting to see what they do after that, because after that they've still got Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
Yeah.
There's still possibly Black Panther 2. There might be a new Thor film since he's now with the Guardians. So it's going to be one of those things to see how Marvel
Yeah.
go with Phase 4. They want to potentially introduce...
I'm looking forward to the Guardians of the Galaxy one.
Speaking of Thor, how did you find that his character? What would you call it? I'm trying to think what you'd call it: the regression, repression,
Fat Thor.
depression.
No, it's just Fat Thor, because he
very
spent
clever.
5 years doing nothing. So
Yeah. I liked that they did that. Like, I liked that, you know, he, I mean, yes, he's a god, but if he messes around with his body, it's still going to
Yeah.
turn out like that.
Yeah.
I love the description of that he looked like melted ice cream. That was great.
Yeah.
and the fact that he lives in the hut with the two other biggest characters
Yeah.
sitting in there, the big, I can't think of the guy's name, the big rock character,
Yeah.
and he's sort of sitting there and they go, oh, This kid's here again, Thor.
Yes.
If I hear you do that one more time, I'm going to come and get you. Basically, it's like, oh,
That's
it's
funny.
still got that power. But it was nice to see that he handed over the kingdom to Valkyrie.
Valkyrie.
I was trying to think of what her name was because
Yep.
technically I'd forgotten just then.
Well, he didn't even really hand it over to her. It sounded like she'd already pretty much taken it.
Well, she was doing the job. He just
Yeah.
went, you know what, I'm going to go into space and,
Yeah.
and you guys can look after Asgard for the time being.
Yep.
So we just need a giant bridge somewhere. It was nice seeing the Hulk in the back of the car bouncing up and down.
Yeah, that was cool.
So you got the biggest character and the smallest character in the car, in the back of this van,
Truck, yeah.
going through, and you're watching the sparks come from every time they hit a bump. You know, and you're
Yeah.
going, well,
There were a lot of good little moments like
Yes,
that. I
there
thought.
are. Yes, most definitely. I was intrigued or impressed by when they made a reference back to the original Iron Man movie, which is hard to believe was like 21 movies ago. Doesn't that seem like
Yeah,
100
it's
years
crazy.
back?
And
it's
11 years ago.
It's just crazy, isn't it? I mean, remember the first Iron Man that set the whole thing off? And how far has the world travelled since then? So absolutely unbelievable.
Marvel done a great thing. They took a chance with Iron Man because he was a lower grade sort of hero at the time. They took a real chance with him. They brought Robert Downey Jr. in and couldn't have cast that better.
Yeah.
You know, I've got to say that
Yeah.
the casting of all the Avengers have been pretty good. You know, I can't see
yes.
anyone who's sort of not feeling right for the character. And I think the time was now for these guys. You know, if you had done this in the 80s and 90s, you know, there's speculation of who they would have had through the years. You know, Tom Cruise would have been Iron Man, and I don't know how that would have worked because I think Tom Cruise is a better actor now than he was back
I
in those
agree with
days.
that, yeah.
So maybe he could have pulled it off, but he certainly doesn't have that essence that Robert has. You know, he sort of sits there, and even so, the Avengers cast are doing things now that the film's finished and publicised. They're doing other things. They've just spent $5 million promoting hospitals and that sort of stuff, and going to these places as themselves. You know, Robert Downey Jr. was at a convention where they had lots of kids dressed as Iron Man. You know, and the organisers obviously knew he was coming out, and he came out and he goes, "All right, so this time, everyone, 1, 2, 3, Iron Man," and they all just sort of look and go, "Hang on, that's him." You know, so they're all sort of stunned at the fact that Iron Man is there with them. you know.
And I have to say that the first Iron Man movie, I think that's still my favourite.
Yeah.
I really loved that. If that hadn't been the first movie, I probably wouldn't have gotten into them as much as I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a good way to start off, that's
Yeah.
for sure. So.
And they have developed the characters pretty well
Yes.
since then. So you've had Thor, you know, some of the films haven't been fantastic, but you've got them all in there. And I loved the end parts. After all the credits, you watch the end sequence. Officially for the first 7 or 8 films, you're sitting there going, what are they going to do this time? And then you see the hammer and you see this and you see that and you go, this is what's coming and I can't wait for that.
So this isn't a spoiler for you people out there, but if you haven't seen the film, don't wait to the end of the credits because there is nothing at the end. So
there is a laugh, but that's it. And
that's
it's
it.
not it's a
There's
faint laugh and that's it.
There's no footage, so it's all good. The good thing about the show is that they have a whole sequence devoted to time travel, as we discussed, and they were discussing all these time travel films, which is a beautiful segue into this. So the idea of this segment is to actually look at films and TV shows from the past that people have either not seen before or completely forgotten about. And in this particular segment, we're going to be discussing about TV shows when we were younger. And like for a lot of people when they were growing up, Star Trek was obviously a very, very popular show, as was Doctor Who. Lost in Space, of course, was very popular, and of course in the English shows with Thunderbirds, UFO, Space 1999, amongst many others. But let's go right back to 1950 with this show.
Space Patrol! High adventure in the wild, vast reaches of space. Missions of daring in the name of interplanetary justice. Travel into the future with Buzz Corey, Commander-in-Chief of the Space Patrol.
So the thing about Space Patrol is it was made in 1950 and it was actually filmed live. And the advantage of that is, with the commercials that they would put into the shows to promote their products, the actors from the shows could actually appear in those ads. So through the eyes of a child, can you imagine seeing this?
Hi, gang. Here's what you get in the membership kit that you need to join the Space Patrol. I'd like to send you a kit today so you can become a real Space Patrol member just like Hap and myself.
And, gang, here's that exciting cosmic glow rocket ring. That amazing new
rocket-shaped ring that glows night and day with a strange, mysterious cosmic blue light. I'll send both of them to you, gang. The Cosmic Glow rocket ring and the official Space Patrol membership kit. A big 2-for-1 offer. A 2-for-1 treat that's terrific.
And, gang, here's all you have to do. Buy a box of wheat checks or rice checks. Then, together with your name and address, send 25 cents in coin to Space Patrol, Box 812, St. Louis, Missouri. Don't forget your 25 cents. That's Space Patrol, Box 812, St. Louis, Missouri.
So if you can imagine if you're a 10-year-old child watching that, how spun out would you be with the actors in the show, the characters actually appear promoting a membership kit for your club? How fast do you think you would sign up for that?
My 25 cents would be on the table right then and there. So I'd do it. I'd buy 2, 50 cents.
Isn't that, it's a classic example of brilliant advertising and marketing using characters from the show itself to promote a product. And you can just imagine, like, if it was like Star Trek, we had Kirk and Spock in an ad saying, hey, join this Star Trek club that we've got here. Can you imagine how would we have reacted to that?
Oh, wow, it would have been amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, to think that they're part of it too, because if they're selling it, then they must be involved somehow. And the chance that you might get to meet them and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, totally. I'd be in it like a shot. For sure.
I mean, I'm just thinking like even like one of the doctors, like William Hartnell or Patrick Troughton coming on and saying, hey, you can join this club. And it would just be absolutely insane. And of course, that's what it was like back then. And of course, it was live. So if you weren't paying attention and you didn't get the address, you'd be kind of a little bit stuck. But I found that by looking at that, and there's a lot of these particular ads, but we picked out that one in particular because it was part of a membership kit for a club. And I was thinking, well, if you were a kid looking at that, as we said, you wouldn't be able to join fast enough. And unfortunately, it was only in America. It wasn't shown anywhere else. But there you go. How good is that, eh?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, imagine if they had advertised toys or collectibles back then, you know, that would have just been running off the shelves. So.
Well, as it turns out, they did, and some of them are actually on eBay these days. So if you'd actually do a search on eBay for Space Patrol items, and we will show some of these commercials a bit later on down the track, because Space Patrol has a very interesting history behind it, but we'll save that for another segment.
Space Patrol!
So that actually brings us to the end of the episode. You can see all of our social media links at the bottom of the screen. Make sure you subscribe and click the bell to get the latest reminders when our next episode will be out, which should be in about a month from now. Also, be sure to leave some comments because we'll actually read some of them out in the next episode. Until then, make sure you stay in the zone. Bye for now.